Checked. Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel. My name is Debbie, and today we want to talk about Danny Masterson, who you might remember from That 70s Show. I believe he played Hyde. Well, he is about to stand trial for some rape charges. I first found out was reminded by this case from Ready to Glare. I'll link her video down below. Please go check her channel. I like her channel. So I thought we'd go through it together, and what I find interesting about this case as well is that there's an element of Scientology, because Danny Masterson is actually a Scientologist. They are also mentioning that they believe that the Scientology church tried to cover up what happened, and that one of the rules in Scientology is that if you go to the police or you kind of rat out one of the members, that you could become excommunicated. The church is denying this, but this is one of the claims, and I'm not quite sure if there's three women that are accusing him. I'm not sure if all three women are part of the Scientology group, but I know at least one is. Yeah, let's go through it together. So obviously we're going to be discussing rape, trigger warning, and I'll link this article down below as well. It says, we're on the scene this morning in Los Angeles, bringing you coverage at Los Angeles Superior Court as Danny Masterson faces a preliminary hearing on charges that he raped 3 different women. A prelim is an important step that asks the prosecutor to convince a judge enough evidence exists to justify scheduling a criminal trial later in the year, at which Masterson will be facing 45 years to life in prison if convicted. In March 2017, we first broke the news here at Underground Bunker that LAPD was investigating Danny Masterson and the Church of Scientology. From the beginning, we have been giving you detailed accounts from allegations being made of each woman who have come forward and who will now be testifying in the preliminary hearing. Time and time again, the other media pretend that virtually nothing is known about the allegations by each of these women except for the barest description of them provided by DA Jackie Lacey last year, when that is simply not the case. Once again, we'll provide a scorecard for you. Oh my god, so another media cover-up, it sounds like. At least that's what this website is alleging. So Jane Doe 1 was a friend of Masterson's, but they were not dating when she attended a party at his house in April 2003. Late that night, according to an initial police report, she began to feel suspiciously drowsy after a single drink the actor brought her, and he tossed her in his backyard jacuzzi, then carried her up to his upstairs room. In and out of consciousness, she came to and realized that he was allegedly raping her. When she tried to push him away, she alleges that he choked her and brandished a firearm. When she complained to the church, it put her through months of bizarre counseling, known as auditing in Scientology, asking her to examine her past lives and find what evil things she had done in earlier centuries that would cause her to be a victim in this lifetime. So basically victim blame and gaslight, basically. The counseling cost her about $15,000. Oh wow, talk about adding insult to injury, literally. And was designed to keep her from going to the police, but she defied her handlers and went to the LAPD in June 2004. Scientology responded by submitting affidavits from church members calling her a liar, and the police closed the case, telling Jane Doe 1 that they couldn't continue it without other victims coming forward. When her case was reopened in 2016 after Jane Doe 2 and Jane Doe 3 came forward, the police department found that reports from the 2004 investigation had mysteriously disappeared. After the original LAPD investigation was closed in 2004, a church attorney brought Jane Doe 1 a handwritten letter of apology from Masterson. Isn't that like an admission of guilt? I guess it depends what it says, but one could see it as an admission of guilt. And asked her to sign a non-disclosure agreement so she would never make her allegations public. It doesn't make sense to put a written apology, which could be seen as an admission of guilt, to give that in writing to someone, which is essentially a form of evidence, and then ask them to sign a non-disclosure agreement afterwards. Just saying, it doesn't really make sense, but I mean, it's good for her if she got evidence though, so that's good. Under pressure from the church, which threatened to declare her unless she complied, which is what I wonder, is that similar to excommunication, or does it just mean you declare someone insane or something? Like 5150 them. She signed the agreement, was paid in the low 6 figures. That's low. I mean, well, I guess he hasn't been famous for a long time, but not that you can put, I'm not saying that you can put a price on that, that's not what I'm saying, but that sounds like a low amount. Well, it sounds like a low amount for you to keep your mouth shut and to swallow that and pretend it never happened, and to protect someone that did you wrong. Especially someone that was on a famous TV show. Okay, key evidence bolstering Jane Doe's first case is documentation by her own mother, which included correspondence with the church at the time, including her complaints to Scientology leader David Miscavige, proof that he was aware of the allegations and how the church was handling them. Also, in recent court hearings, we have learned that although the LAPD mysteriously lost its version of Jane Doe 1's 2004 file, the DA's office still had its copy and shared it with the Masterson defense. Jane Doe number 2. Also, Jane number 2 in the civil suit, and victim C in our initial hearing. Okay, so from what I'm gathering from this, it seems like there is a civil lawsuit and a criminal lawsuit. From what I can read, I'm not trying to go on AliExpress right now. Sorry. Oh, sorry. So it sounds like there's 2 lawsuits. So one is criminal, where if he could go to jail, and another one is civil, where they're going to try to sue for damages, because it sounds like in the civil suit. And this one that we're currently talking about is a criminal suit. Jane Doe number 2. And sometime between October and December of that year, he was accused of raping a 23-year-old woman who he had invited to his Hollywood Hills home. And like Jane Doe 1, Jane Doe 2 was someone who had known Masterson but was not dating him when she accepted his invitation and went to his house in late 2003. She told us what happened in an interview, including this disturbing quote. "He flipped me over and he just started pounding me. I was trying not to vomit. I was saying no a lot, but it didn't matter to him. I kept trying not to puke on his bed while he was doing it. It was pretty brutal, and it was really horrible the way he was doing it." Key evidence in Jane Doe number 2's case is that a veteran actress, we're not naming, told us that Jane Doe 2 recounted these details to her at the time in 2003, and the details of her allegations haven't changed. Jane Doe number 3. Jane Doe number 3 dated Masterson for 6 years, but then broke up with him after, she says, he raped her anally while she was unconscious in 2001. She reported the incident to the church at the time, which encouraged her not to take allegations to law enforcement. In 2016, she learned for the first time that there were other women who had allegations against Masterson, and so she decided, with 2 of them, to approach the LAPD. She's been outspoken about Masterson and appeared on the final episode of Leah Remini's A&E series, Scientology in the Aftermath, which is now on Netflix. Okay, well, she's not Jane Doe anymore, like, might as well just name her. Frick. Now people, oh, that sucks. I mean, obviously she wants to be anonymous, so maybe don't give out or divulge publicly these kinds of details, because all it's going to take is for someone to pull that up and figure out who she is. So maybe respect the fact that this person wants to be anonymous. Just saying. In August 2019, Jane Doe 3, along with 3 other victims, filed a lawsuit against Masterson and the Church of Scientology over the harassment they say they've been through for coming forward. She was also joined as a plaintiff by her husband, and the 2 of them talked to us about the surveillance they've been subjected to, which they say has included the death of 2 of their dogs. Oh my god, that's awful if that's true. Oh my gosh. So Jane Doe has begun her testimony, and deputy has been guiding her with questions so she can explain how she ended up at Danny Masterson's house on the night of April 24th, 2003. Danny's sister Alana Masterson is in the courtroom, and so is his brother Christopher and mom Carol. Danny himself was at the defense table. Mueller has been carefully bringing out who the other people present were that night, including Danny's close friend Luke Watson, his assistant Bree Schaefer, and publicist Jenny Weinman. It's about 1:30 in the morning. Danny has given JD1 a drink, and he's announced that he's going to throw her in the pool. He then threw her in the jacuzzi. That's where we ended before break. Jane Doe 1 picked up after the break by describing Danny Masterson at about 2 in the morning, April 25th, 2003, tossing her into his jacuzzi. He had pulled her by the wrists through the house and out the back and told her she knew the 15-second rule. She explained that Danny would give you 15 seconds to remove things from your pockets before he tossed you in the pool or jacuzzi. She said that she pulled off her leather boots and was unzipping her pants. She didn't want them to get wet, but she wasn't sure if she had succeeded or not. At this point, she starts to explain that some fuzziness had come over her. Some 20 to 30 minutes after sipping from the right cocktail Danny had given her, she was losing control of her motor skills and her brain was blurry. She said that she had tried to grab her chair when he started to pull her, but suddenly she didn't have her normal strength, for example. Once he tossed her in the jacuzzi, she remembers 3 other people in the pool, 2 women she didn't know and Jimmy DeBello. Jane Doe 1 said she was upset. She had to be somewhere in the morning, she had no change of clothes, and she was soaking wet. Luke Watson brought her a towel and helped her get out of the jacuzzi. She was getting more and more overtaken by whatever was affecting her. I couldn't stand up. Something was wrong, she told Watson. I felt that I didn't have the ability to stand. She also experienced shallow breathing and her vision was affected. Luke, I can't see, she said. He told her to open his eyes. Jane Doe 1 was crying at this point on the stand, trying to make us understand how scary this was. She couldn't see because she couldn't open her eyes. She felt nauseous and couldn't breathe properly. Sounds like probably G-holing or something. Like he slipped her some GHB. She was having a hard time sitting up and Luke was holding her. I felt like I was going to throw up, she said. Then she heard a sound behind her. The sound men's shorts make, swishing sound, and then Danny Masterson's voice. She just needs to throw up, he said. She remembered Danny saying that he was going to take her upstairs and stick his fingers down her throat. At that point, she says, Danny and Luke argued over it. Luke wanted to take her and was trying to keep Danny from doing it. Danny picked her up and then she really felt like she was spinning. Put me down, I'm going to throw up, she remembers saying. She said Danny then said something to Luke that implied that Watson knew it wasn't safe for Danny to be alone with her at that point. Jane Doe 1 remembers Danny saying to Luke, she's my homie, I would never. Danny then carried her upstairs and she didn't want to go. I wanted to stay outdoors, she said. Danny took her to a bathroom at the top of the stairs, and at that point, Mueller pointed out that there was a bathroom downstairs that he could have taken her to without having to make the effort to carry her up the steps. Once Danny got her to the upstairs bathroom, she testified, he put her on the floor and then shoved his fingers down her throat. She threw up all over herself and into her hair. Oh, you're disgusting. You threw up everywhere, Danny complained. She then lay down on the cold tile and felt better. She just wanted to stay there. At this point, she thinks she lost consciousness, fell asleep, and then the rest of that night she remembers coming to for short periods, and so her memories are those of brief periods of consciousness. The next thing she remembered was hearing a shower and hearing Danny say, you have to go into the shower, you're disgusting. He pulled her into the shower, and now she realized that she had no top on. She didn't remember her clothes being pulled off. She might have still had some panties, but she wasn't sure. He was holding her up in the shower, and when she looked down, he was soaping her breasts. I couldn't believe his hands were on my breasts, she said. Then he held her against the tile and told her to take a bar of soap from him. But then she dropped it. He pushed her down to pick it up, which she struggled with, but when she finally got hold of the soap, he pulled her back up by the hair. Pick up the fucking soap, he had yelled at her. She also remembers being pulled out of the shower and a towel. Then she remembers him picking her up by her arms and hoisting her onto his bed in the darkened bedroom. When I came to, he was on top of me and he was inside of me, Jane Doe 1 testified. She was on her back and Danny had penetrated her. She said she remembers grabbing at his hair and also grabbing a pillow and smashing it into his face, but she said he smashed it back down on her face and held it there, and she lost consciousness again. This was difficult for Jane Doe 1 to say, but then Mueller, knowing that he had got things down more explicitly, asked her to confirm that she was referring to Masterson's penis being in her vagina. Jane Doe bravely answered yes to each of his questions. I couldn't breathe, I couldn't see, and I was unconscious, she said, explaining what happened when she shoved the pillow in her face, crying as she testified. She came to again, and she tried reaching toward a nightstand next to the bed. She remembers him putting his hand around her throat and squeezing with one hand while holding her wrist with the other, all while he was still inside her. Mueller asked if she remembered what Danny was saying, and she remembers him telling her, this feels good, you like this, and you're not going to tell Paige, you're not going to tell Lisa, and you're not going to tell fucking anybody. This, we learned, was a reference to something that had happened months earlier in September 2002, and we will come back to it later in the testimony. Another unconscious period, but then Jane Doe came to again. This time, she heard a voice at the door. Danny was still penetrating her, but he stopped at the sound of the voice. "Don't move, don't say a fucking word," she remembers him saying. Danny got up, and she heard the door open, and she heard nothing. She passed out again. Eventually, she remembers rolling off the bed and onto the floor, and then she began crawling. She hit a door and reached up to open it, then went inside. She didn't realize it was a closet, but she found a pile of clothes and got into a fetal position on it. At some point, she heard Masterson calling out her name. Then she woke, and it was early daylight. She was very cold. Mueller, at that point, put up a photo of Danny's bedroom, and she showed which doorway led to the bathroom and which was the closet door she had crawled into. At some point, she had crawled out of the closet, and Danny was on the bed. "What the fuck are you doing?" he asked her. He picked her up and put her on the bed, but she said he didn't touch her after that. She doesn't remember getting dressed. Eventually, she went downstairs and ran into Luke Watson. "Luke, what happened?" she asked him, and his answer was strange. "Nope, nope, nope. You're going straight to the president's office." The judge asked Jane Doe 1 to explain this, and she said that the president referred to the president of the Celebrity Center, who at that time was Susan Watson, Luke's mother. Luke helped her get a cab so she could get to his house, where she still had an overnight bag in her car from the previous evening. Bree Schaefer also lived there and had left a things that shouldn't be report about what had happened. From Bree's perspective, they were supposed to be helping her get to the airport for an early flight. Jane Doe 1 drove to her parents' house. She knew they'd be worried about her because she hadn't called, her phone was dead, and she was supposed to be there hours ago. It was her father's birthday, and after a noon barbecue, they'd be taking a flight as a group that night to Florida for a week in Clearwater as a vacation. At this point, Mueller spent some time asking Jane Doe 1 questions to help the judge understand what it was like to be a second-generation Scientologist in this position, how strict the hierarchy is, and how ironclad the policies. And then he asked her the consequences if she did not follow those policies. At this point, Jane Doe 1 became very emotional and caught us by surprise. Those consequences, she explained, included being expelled or excommunicated by the church and expelled from your family as you're labeled a suppressive person. Mesereau now objects, but the judge fends him off, saying that she had explained at the beginning of the hearing that she would allow some limited testimony on these Scientology matters to help understand Jane Doe 1's state of mind at the time. Mueller went on. "If you were to not follow those policies and you were labeled an SP, what does that mean? My parents would have to disown me. My friends, everyone I knew would view me as an enemy," she answered. At this time, she simply didn't have any friends who weren't Scientologists, and her parents employed anywhere from 50 to 200 Scientologists in their work. And Jane Doe 1 had a young daughter who went to a Scientology school. "It would affect my daughter," she said. The family, the night of April 25th, flew to Florida for their vacation. She said that at the time she was feeling intense pain. Mueller necessarily required her to be more specific for the record. "It felt like I had been stabbed in my vagina," she said. "There was intense pain and discharge, and also in her anus. I found it difficult to sit," she said. Then, and this was a little confusing, we have to admit, Mueller asked Jane Doe 1 about threats that had been made to her, and suddenly she was testifying to another memory in the boardroom. We're not sure why this didn't come up chronologically at an earlier point. Jane Doe 1 testified that at one point Masterson had reached into a drawer on his nightstand and had taken out a black pistol and had brandished it, saying, "Don't fucking move, don't you fucking move." She showed how he had held it at a kind of a funny angle like a gangster might, and didn't actually point the barrel at her face, but the implication was clear. He then put the gun back into the drawer. Now she's testifying about Florida again, and we're back to chronological order. On her trip, after 24 hours, besides the pain she was feeling, bruises started to show up on her wrists, hips, thighs, and neck. She then told a young cousin of hers, Rachel, that something very terrible had happened to her. But she hesitated to call it rape or contemplate doing something about it. "I had never known anyone in Scientology who reported a rape," she said. But when she got back to Los Angeles, she then did go to her master at arms, a Sea Org member named Jillian Swartz. He closed the door and she started telling him about her bruises and that she had been at Masterson's house. "If you're going to say the word rape, we don't say it. We don't say that word here," she remembers Swartz telling her. He brought her policy books and explained the suppressive person policy. He had her demonstrate it, she said, and I was waiting for Mueller or the judge to ask for an explanation of what that meant, but neither did. Jane Doe 1 was asked who else she had told about the incident besides her cousin Rachel and Julian Schwartz. She said she had told Sean Fabos, a close friend who was also her mother's assistant. Mueller asked her if she was under orders from Scientology not to report her rape to the LAPD, and she said yes, both verbal and written. The judge then asked for clarification. You're saying that it's a suppressive act to report a rape? If it's a church member on church member, yes, Jane Doe replied. In April 24, 2004, Jane Doe 1 wrote a letter to the IJC, International Justice Chief Mike Ellis, asking permission from the church to report the incident as a rape without being declared suppressive as a result. The letter was produced and entered into evidence. She got a reply from Ellis also in April 2004, and the letter was also entered into evidence. Jane Doe 1 was asked to explain what it said. It meant that I could not go to the police and that Danny was in good standing with them, she replied. Fuck, that's awful. Mesereau objected, saying she was mischaracterizing the letter and she was overruled. You can see the letter for yourself. Dear Jane, you are correct that this situation does need to be resolved for the good of all concerned. Regarding bringing civil suit against Danny, this is something that you will have to decide for yourself after reviewing the alternatives and possible consequences carefully. If you do decide to go forward with this, you may consider that you have fulfilled your ecclesiastical obligation to inform as covered a suppressive act, suppression of Scientology and Scientologists. So regardless of your decisions in the legal arena, you do need to apply LRH technology as the ultimate solution to any problem. Meaning, if you go forward, then you will be basically excommunicated, which is fucking disgusting. We will point out that the import of this letter is not obvious, and Mike Rinder helped us understand the clear message it would have for a Scientologist. We wonder if Mesereau is going to try to make even more of an issue of this later. Anyway, the judge overruled his objection. So why, Mueller asked Jane Doe 1, did you go ahead and report the rape to the LAPD in June 2004 if they had made it plain that she'd be declared? I found out what happened to me had happened to a girl named Lily, Jane answered. Mesereau made one of his loudest objections, but the judge allowed it, saying what's important is what's in Jane Doe 1's mind at this time. So Jane Doe then went to the police station to report the rape all alone. Was there some response from the church? Mueller asked, and Jane Doe 1 began to say that Julian Schwartz called her. But then the judge called for a sidebar with the attorneys. We don't know what they worked out. So Mueller then turned to the prior incident that was briefly mentioned earlier, the one that happened in September 2002. Jane Doe 1 explained that she had gone to Danny's house with friends and had ended up in bed with him. It was sex that I would have never wanted to have sober, she said, implying that she was drunk when it happened. She described that at one point she found herself on her stomach and he had penetrated her anally. I was incredibly upset by it. I was upset and ashamed. She had shared what had happened with her friends, Bree, Paige, and Lisa. It had caused a blow-up among her friends, but she had eventually worked out a peace with Danny in the weeks leading up to the April 2003 incident. And that concluded the direct testimony. He started out by asking if her mother and father had quit Scientology after the alleged rape. Her father died some years ago. She said that her mother was currently a member, but she seemed to resist Mesereau's characterization that her parents had remained church members throughout the period after the alleged rape. That seemed a pretty minor point. He asked her if she'd reviewed documents about the case, and for the most part, she hadn't. She had to review some police reports, and she was asked to describe them. This seemed to backfire on him, because although the police reports she was talking about weren't from 2004, they were recent ones she had filed over her trash being stolen, her car broken into, and ID theft. Oops. He then bored into the 2004 police report and said that there was no mention of a firearm on them, but she pointed out that she didn't write the reports, which seemed like a good point. He then brought up the September 2002 incident and that she had characterized it as consensual in a police report, but now was saying that it wasn't consensual. Again though, she didn't write the report. He pointed out that one of the people she named as a witness at Danny's house in April 2003 was not on the police report in June 2004. We expect that will come up again later, so we'll hold the name of that witness for now. Mesereau. The first sex encounter in 2002, you say you were drunk. What were you drinking? Grapefruit vodka. How many? Mueller. Objection, not relevant. Judge. Sustained. It doesn't matter whether you're inebriated or not. If you're not, if anything, that makes it more plausible that consent wasn't there because you're too out of it to consent. So that line of questioning is just doing nothing but trying to victim shame, and I'm not here for it. Did you tell the police that you were drinking that night? I don't recall. Oh, because she was drinking it was her fault? You said in the report that you work in real estate. What? What's that supposed to be? Objection, irrelevant, sustained. And a few other questions like that. We figure Massaro was probably taking things easier at trial, but gosh, he really hasn't seemed to lay a finger on her at this point. Perhaps they'll shift strategies after lunch break, post-lunch. So continuing with the cross-examination, starts to bore into her about settlements and money. He's going to try to make it look like she's simply a gold digger. In 2003, which is the oldest trick in the book, you just want money, meh. In 2003, when Jane Doe 1 sent a letter to the IJC asking for permission to report the rape and sue Danny, did she hire an attorney to write a civil complaint? No. She didn't have one written up to show people? No. Have you ever seen a civil complaint written? No. Was there a settlement? Yes. And here we'll remind you of something we've been reporting for 4 years now, that after the DA declined to charge a case in 2004, Scientology put heavy pressure on Jane Doe 1 to accept a settlement and sign an NDA with Masterson. He paid her in the low six figures, and she had to go along with it or be declared. We've been saying this for 4 years now. And yes, she testified today. She did hire an attorney briefly to help her get through that, but Jane Doe was unflappable. She didn't ask for a complaint to be written up in 2004 and didn't file one. He then brought up the 2019 lawsuit to imply she was just asking for money again. She denied it, saying that she was suing to get him to stop stalking and harassing her. He then went on to a general description about how lawsuits are about money and explained to her what damages are. But, well, not this one. This one's a criminal one. It's not about money. It's about jail. But then she said something really poignant and kind of sad. In 2004, what she was asking for was an apology, that Danny help out on a rape hotline and that he donate to the Way of Happiness. That's a big reminder that in Jane Doe 1 in 2003-2004 was still a Scientologist and still thought like one. And again this afternoon, that was a key point to remember. Massaro asked, so if that's all you wanted, why did you ask for permission to sue Danny when you wrote to the IJC in April 2004? He probably shouldn't have asked that. Her answer, I knew of other victims, and I wanted to depose him to get those names. The LAPD had told her that he was a celebrity, she was just one girl, and without other victims, they couldn't charge him. I don't know, so to me, I think it has to be more than just the fact that he's a celebrity, because we've seen people get charged with no proof, or get restraining orders with no proof. So I think it's also maybe the added layer of the Scientology behind him, and money, and it's LA, and there's a lot of celebrities that are Scientologists, so I'm wondering if that adds to adds a layer of protection to him. So again, Massaro was trying to make her out to be a conniving money grubber, and what emerges is pretty much the opposite. She was trying to bring a monster to justice. So as of 2004, how long have you been in Scientology? Since I was born. Had you received an education in church? Yes. In ethics? Yes. Were you told not to lie? Yes. Have you followed that precept? Objection, sustained. You wanted Danny Masterson charged for a crime? Yes. For the money? No. And she accepted the civil settlement in 2004. If I didn't, I would be declared and I would owe millions. You would owe millions? What? What if you don't have millions? It's weird. I don't think that would hold up in court. Just saying. Okay, getting back to the prior sexual encounter in September 2002, you're now contending it was non-consensual. Yes, but in the June 2004 police report you said it was consensual. Yes, but now you're trying to get money in the 2009 lawsuit. Objection. Massaro also points out that no gun is mentioned in the 2004 reports, but now she's saying there's a firearm. Why didn't you tell police about a gun in 2004? Again, however, she didn't write the police report in 2004, and she didn't see it until 2017. Did you notice there was no mention of a gun when you saw it? I don't know. I'll be honest with you. I filed a police report, and I never saw the physical report, so I don't know if they showed it to her. It was one of the many things I noticed, and yeah, she wrote to the police about after she finally saw the report. Massaro then asked about how often she saw Masterson and whether they went out to clubs together in those years. She said that they would run into each other at events and clubs, but they didn't go to those places together. And she had been to his house 20 to 30 times before the night of the rape, but often it was because she went there with Bree Schaefer, who she considered her best friend, and Danny often wasn't even there at the time. The night of the alleged rape, you said he carried you up the stairs. Did you tell someone else he helped you walk up the stairs? I have flashes of both, she said. So you're not sure? I think it was both. Ms. Rowland spent some wasted time trying to catch her in a lie about where she woke up in the morning after the rape, in the bed or in the closet, but her testimony had actually been pretty clear that she woke up in the closet, crawled out, then he pulled her into the bed, she fell asleep, and then woke up in the bed later. So the answer was both. She woke up both in the closet and in the bed. Then it got worse. Were you raped with vaginal sex? Both. You were raped vaginally and some other way? Yes. Have you consistently had interviews maintained that you were raped vaginally and anally? Yes. So any police report that doesn't contain anal rape, would that be wrong? Yes. Again, and this will become clear a little later on, we have Mesero trying to trip her up on a 2004 police report when she has had issues with the police and how they wrote up that report. Another thing Mesero came back to again and again was her assertion about who she told first about the rape. In her testimony in the morning, she said that when she got to Florida, she had first shared with her 17-year-old cousin, Rachel, who had asked her about her bruises, that Danny Masterson had done something very, very wrong to her, but she didn't use the word rape. Later, when she got back to Los Angeles, she told a few more people about it and began to use the word rape. So did she first tell that she'd been raped? She is saying Rachel now because that's essentially what she was doing without using the word. It's complex. It totally reflects the reality of sexual assault victims and what they go through, and Mesero was trying to exploit it for impeaching the witness. Our impression was that Judge Olmedo wasn't impressed. About the fourth time he had gone through this, Mesero once again had asked her what she had told her young cousin Rachel in Florida. Getting emotional, Jane Doe said that Rachel had asked her about her bruises, but she didn't want to use the word sex or rape. Jane Doe 1 really broke down at this point, and Judge Olmedo asked for a break. It was really hard for us to see how this was helping Mesero. He wants to catch her in a lie, but all he's doing is helping her show how hard it is to talk about such a thing because it was such a monstrous rape. But then it just got even more awful. Did you ever tell Bree Schaefer that you became pregnant by Danny Masterson? No. That you were pregnant but you were miscarrying? No. Did you ever tell Bree that you were drunk in Danny's bedroom? Yes. You did? Yes. And the 2002 incident, where did you drink? A grapefruit and vodka triple and then half of a second drink. Did you ever talk to Danny after the alleged rape? It was hard to hear her, but we think Jane Doe 1 said there was a brief phone call, but then moments later I was forced into a room with him in April 2004 by the church. And we have written about that incident before, which was facilitated by Alfredi Johnson, and it's the incident where Danny cracked a couple of jokes and Scientology ended the session. Mesero then asked her what a knowledge report was. Did you ever fill out a knowledge report about rape? Was it truthful? She points out that a knowledge report written by her was into the specifications of Julian Schwartz. It was a church document written under church policies. Did Danny write one? No. He wrote either a false report or things that should not be report. Did you write in the KR that you remembered almost nothing about the night before? It came back slowly. As the day went on, she recalled more. Are you aware that Danny Masterson went to work at 9 a.m. that morning? No. No one's ever told you that? No. He asked her about a follow-up police interview later in June 2004. Did you watch Masterson make your drink the night in 2003? No. Did you think there was a sedative in your drink? No. Did you ever tell someone there was a sedative in your drink? I wouldn't use the word sedative. And you never had a hospital test after to find if you were drugged? No. Did you tell Bree Schaefer in New York that you had sex with Danny and it wasn't forced? Incorrect. Did you say rape? She did. She used the word. Did you tell Jenny Wayman that Danny was the best sex you ever had? No. Did you tell Paige Dorian that it was the best sex you ever had? No. Did you ever tell Paige Dorian the positions I was in, I finished 3 times? No. Did you ever tell a police officer that after the 2002 incident, you were a few days late and you might be pregnant by Danny? Yes. I had missed a period and I took a pregnancy test. You told Masterson? Yes. Did you miscarry? Either a miscarry or my period started a week later. Were you happy about it? At this point, Jane Doe 1 explained what? Mueller loudly barked objection and Judge Almeida quickly said sustained. After the miscarriage or period, you went back to Danny Masterson's house late at night. Yes. When this came up, we remember how carefully Mueller had laid the foundation for how that night developed, that there were a series of changing plans, that Jane Doe 1 had ended up at Mueller's house almost by accident after trying to figure out how to get Luke Watson home and to get his keys. We figure the judge probably remembers that too. After a short break, Mesero continued, asking her about when she learned that the DA was not going to charge the 2004 case. Did you criticize the LAPD about that? Then came Miss Rowe's big bombshell. You did call my investigator and use a fake name, did you not? Objection sustained. So Miss Rowe has to move on, and he goes into a subject that will take up a lot of time. The mysterious write-up. First, she has Jane Doe 1 explain what an OWW is, and she explains about how Scientology wants you to confess to things in your own words. And are they handwritten or typed? I did them handwritten, never typed. The issue here is that a typed up copy of Jane Doe 1's OWs had mysteriously showed up, which contained a lot of secret materials from her folders. She acknowledged most of the material had come from things she had told Scientology, but others didn't sound like her at all, and she had never typed up an OWW. Mesereau tried to impeach her based on things that were in the document, but the judge reminded him that she denied putting it together. Finally, at one point, she blurted out that a Scientology private investigator had supplied the document to Mesereau's office. We expect to hear more about that when Mueller gets a chance on redirect. The most striking point about it was when the judge pointed out that according to Scientology, you're supposed to implicate yourself, and so she would judge it based on that. And it's very smart, and wow, she's paying such close attention. Another really interesting moment. Did you ever describe yourself as promiscuous, ever to Scientology? Yes. But your standard of promiscuous and mine are probably not the same. Again, this was a moment when the context of Scientology is absolutely key. And then something that seemed pretty important. Mesereau asked, did you ever meet with LAPD Detective Vargas about the purpose of correcting your narrative? Now see, the question on its own sounds bad, that a rape victim is asking to correct their narrative, but that's not what she asked to do. She asked to correct the LAPD's version of what had happened. Why? For the first time, in the spring of 2017, she had had her first chance to see the 2004 police report, and she was stunned at how many errors there were in it. It had been written by a desk sergeant who didn't even classify it as a rape, but as an injury report. He had mixed up the 2002 and 2003 incidents, and there were many omissions. So now we learn that what Mesereau has been trying to impeach her with, a flawed LAPD report written in 2004, not Jane Doe 1's changing narrative or of what had happened. Amazing. One more big thing and we are done for the day. Mesereau asked Jane Doe 1 if she was told by the LAPD not to call the other victims. This not only prompted Mueller to object, but Judge Almeida called for an end of the day and gave a long admonition to Mesereau. She pointed out that it would be relevant if the victims were talking to each other in between 2001 and 2017 before they went to the LAPD together, suggesting possible collusion, but after they had come forward seemed like a smart point by the judge. Judge Almeida called for court to begin at 9 a.m. tomorrow, with Mesereau continuing to cross-examine Jane Doe 1. She hoped to finish up Jane Doe 1 by lunch, but it might be finished by Friday. People then filled out. We had a nice chat with Graham Barry. Chatted for a little while, discussing the performance, and then as the defense team was walking out, Danny Masterson leaning close to Graham and your proprietor said rather cockily, "See you all tomorrow." We were stunned. Well, that was some ending to some day, and we all get to do it tomorrow morning. We'll see you then. Okay, so I didn't realize that was just day 1. So we now know that this will be moving forward to trial. I will do a separate video breaking down day 2 of this. What do you guys think so far? I would be curious to hear what the other women have to say. I mean, I'm also very interested in it because of the element of Scientology, and from Leah Remini I've heard lots of stories about how toxic they can be, and they have, I would imagine, a lot of power in Hollywood because there's a lot of celebrities that are a part of it. So the cult aspect of it interests me because, I mean, I grew up in a cult too. Nothing as intense as this. It's like a Christian cult, nothing like this. It's more of like a go knocking door to door kind of thing. But so I think I'd like to follow this case. Let me know if you're interested about this because, yeah, it seems intense. There's a lot of stuff coming out about sick things that celebrities do, especially when they're protected by institutions. Curious to hear your thoughts. Keep it, of course, respectful. Thank you so much for watching, guys, and I'll catch you in the next one. Bye, guys.